Fine. Bending's hard. Dust right in the eye. Okay. All right, so who remembers this build? This was our Corsair 5000D that we ended up doing a full tutorial on how to build a water-cooled system using all of Corsair's Hydrorex products, Hydrorex fittings, tubing, water block for my Strix 3090. We've got our CPU block in there, currently set up on AMD, which also works with Intel with the proper bracket, reservoir, radiators, fans, the whole deal. In fact, the block that's even in there is this one, the XC7. That's cool, but you know what's cooler? The JayzTwoCents Edition, XC8. One hole better than the 7. We're gonna talk about it today. ViewSonic is proud to announce their all-new Elite XG32OU gaming monitor. The XG32OU features a 4K 32-inch display with a 1 millisecond response time and 150 Hz refresh rate, and builds upon ViewSonic's revered Elite panel lineup. The ViewSonic Elite series monitors feature clean aesthetic design that blend well with any setup, whether it be professional or personal, due to their sleek design and tasteful lighting. To learn more about ViewSonic's gaming monitors, or to see their full lineup of monitors, click the link in the description below. So the entire reason I have this system here right now is we're gonna be swapping out this block for the JayzTwoCents Edition one. This is something that I'm actually really excited about. Corsair and I have been in almost a year now with this product. So like I said, this has been nearly a year in the making, lots of testing, lots of data. And when they came to me and said, Jay, do you want to do a JayzTwoCents Edition Waterblock with us? Would you be interested in that? I'll tell you first and foremost, I was like, look, with my name on it, I still have to believe in the product, but also be as impartial as possible. I'm a water cooling enthusiast. I'm gonna use tons of water cooling products moving forward, both my own and other brands. So as we move forward talking about this product, I want you just to remember that although my name is on it, it is not gonna be like, from now on, Jay's only gonna recommend the JayzTwoCents Corsair Edition Waterblock, because these are actually gonna be in limited production. They're available now. Link is actually down in the description below. But this was just to be able to have a water cooling product with my name on it, 10 years after I started this channel, is something I definitely wouldn't have believed in. However, I did tell them there are things about the XC7 that I wasn't a fan of, that I would like to see incorporated into the XC8 with my revisions and my changes. And one of the things that has always bugged me about this particular product right here is if we go ahead and open up the top, everything has this kind of a shiny black nickel plating. And I call it black nickel because that's what this is actually kind of referred to in terms of a color. It's not as bright as actual nickel plating would be. And then you can see it right here on the Intel bracket that's pre-installed. So I was just not a fan of that. As much as we love the performance of this, ever since this block came out, Phil and I could not undo seeing this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm super happy that it's happy, but I just was not a fan of the black nickel plating, dark nickel plating, whatever. I do like the pre-applied thermal paste and how it's a hexagon pattern with a gap in between all the hexagons. So as you apply pressure, it fills in the gaps nicely. Rather than squishing it all out the sides, it closes the gaps and then you get nice good coverage. Oh, and of course this is an RGB block. You've got your back plates. You need retention brackets for both AMD and Intel, rubber insulated. And then the hardware, again, one of my biggest points of contention, that same kind of a black nickel is just carried through with all the hardware. First thing you're gonna notice is a black hardware on there. Everything is kind of this nice satin black. It's not Cerakoted. I can't remember what the exact process is called, but it's the exact same process they do to their black fittings. So first and foremost, I was like, guys, that has to match. This has to be a black that matches the aesthetic of obviously what is happening here with our block. This also has the updated rear retention system. So unlike this big one right here, this had to be redesigned slightly because of the fact that this has to also work with LGA 1700. So it's adjustable. The pieces move in and out, that way they'll fit in everything from LGA 775 all the way up to 1700. They've got their cutouts. You can see these little notches right here, so they're not gonna interfere with anything on the back of the motherboard. It's also insulated right here, so you can see no metal bits will be able to touch your board. And then it's got little adhesives on here to make it easier in installing, where you pull out the little adhesive backing and then it will stick to the back side of the socket. And then when you put your block down, it'll be easier to get everything screwed in. If you need extra insulation for some reason, because different boards have different pieces on the back, you get an extra bit of retention that or protection here that you can put on your back of your motherboard so that nothing shorts out. However, this is what we are all here to see right now. This is the JayzTwoCents Edition Waterblock. So it is RGB. The logo does light up. The rings around the fittings also line up, as well as this layer in between right here. So this ring, where you see the white, lights up. One of the things I said I wanted was it to just look different. I mean, if we had just gone with matte black, like you see here, it would just look like the standard block with being more solid in the middle here. And that's not what I wanted. I'm a car guy. Can't help it, always have been, always will be. And one of the most exotic products that you can get for any car is anything made out of forged carbon. So carbon fiber is one thing. Carbon fiber sheets, you lay it down, you get a resin, it hardens, it's the carbon fiber, woven carbon fiber is very strong. Now they have forged carbon fiber, which is very much like it sounds. It's bits of carbon that are literally compacted and heated to make a really strong forged carbon piece. Now, obviously this is not made out of real forged carbon, and this would cost like $6,000 or more. So it is a forged carbon effect that's on here. It is polished and nice and shiny. Same thing with the middle. So in my opinion, it gives a nice contrast to the standard just black. And because it's shiny, I feel like it's gonna actually be a nice centerpiece once you get it into a system, especially when there's lights. So if you look in here, the matte black block just sort of blends in, which is not a bad thing. If you stand out too far, it could be gaudy. But one of the other things that we did is if you look down inside the fittings, it is actually not nickel plated. And that is for just a little bit extra thermal conductivity when it comes to the cold plate. So this has a lot different design from the way this was when this was first designed. So it's got extra cooling fins. The jet plate that pushes down on the cooling fins has higher flow. There's more fins carved into the cold plate, giving it a higher surface area so that you get better transfer of heat. That's one of the things you're getting with this being one of the XC8 blocks. But the JayzTwoCents logo does glow, like I said, and then same pre-applied paste on the back. The only difference is it has my logo in there. Some of you might have actually seen this logo appear on some non-JayzTwoCents Edition blocks. That was actually, and you might still find that actually, that is a little promo that's being run right now where if you find, and I know some people actually tweeted me and were like, hey, I wasn't expecting to see your logo on the back of the block. That's neat. And I didn't say anything because it's kind of a scavenger hunt where if you have one of the blocks that has my thermal paste logo on the back and it's a standard block like that one, if you email Corsair your serial number, because they know which serial numbers had them, then you're entered into being a drawing to be able to win a free t-shirt and a free gaming mat. So one of our JayzTwoCents gaming mats. So one of the things you guys might also know Corsair is known for is a proprietary plug on all of their RGB stuff, their IQ stuff. Mine includes an adapter here to convert it from the Corsair plug to a standard 3-pin ARGB. So you can plug it into any ARGB controller or your motherboard to be able to control this without having to have the Commander Pro or any of that sort of stuff. So this was important. I was like, that's got to be in there. And I'm excited to see that. I think a lot of their blocks have that now. Also a nice change versus some of the first generation blocks here is, as you can see on both the AMD and Intel bracket, they are pre-installed with the proper spacing. The spring is already installed. You got the screw or the nut that you can turn here. Nice knurled, easy to grab. So it'll, you won't have to assemble anything like this and then make sure all the tension's right. It's already there. And if you need to switch the bracket, like from Intel, be careful with the thermal paste because we want to squish my name all over your CPU. So just like almost like any ASIC bracket, just unscrew that. If we're gonna go to Intel like we need to do here, boom, see? We are now converted over to Intel. And then it just tensions down. Once it's tightened up, it holds it down. So there you go. So anyway, that's the product in a nutshell right there. A year worth of R&D and design changes. And I've actually got more of them over here. Look at that. It's almost like my own product on my own shelf. Oh, that's upside down, just like me. And that's a neat feeling right there. I'm gonna tell you, one that I am, at the risk of sounding like one of the 7 deadly sins, I'm extremely proud of this moment. All right, so I got my block installed in there, and you know what? Just like I was hoping, the forged carbon effect really does not look that bad in there. Full disclosure, this is my first time actually hooking it up and putting in any fluid through it. I waited for this video to do it with you guys. You guys saw me mock it up in the Star Wars build, ended up taking it out of there because I'm gonna be using an AIO in there after all. But this is my first time having a production model, because that was a prototype, a production model in a system with fluid running through it at all and seeing any sort of light up effect. So you can see it lights up all the way around the edge, like I said, around the fittings. The JayzTwoCents logo lights up, the edge lights up, and it down fires onto the motherboard. So you can see the motherboard is being lit up as well. I was afraid it'd be a little too gaudy and a little too busy for what would be considered a clean aesthetic, but I think it looks just fine in there. Phil, brutal honesty, what do you think of the forged carbon look in there?
I like how it's subtle enough to not really notice at first glance, and then you look at it, you're like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take away from anything else in the build. It's because nothing else in here is forged carbon. Like, I don't know, hey Corsair, maybe we should do a Waterblock version for the graphics cards with forged carbon. But I digress. It doesn't take away from anything else. It adds just enough to make it unique, but not like, hey, look at me, I'm forged carbon. But of course, looks is only half of the story. So right now we are currently idling at 34 degrees. A lot of people email me and say, hey, my AMD is idling way too high at like 1.475 volts. And it's like, that's actually pretty normal. iCUE is controlling the fans. So if I need the fans to ramp up or turn down, it's all gonna be done through iCUE control on this system. It is set to its own curve, which I've, with the previous block in there, had set to where it was not too loud, but definitely didn't get too hot. And here we go. This is our first run with the JayzTwoCents Edition XC8 Waterblock, 60 degrees Celsius under load. Everything is maxed out here, as you can see. Max CPU power draw and wattage, max CPU PPT wattage, max amps, and then max EDC. So right now we are absolutely positively limited by power, not by cooling. So we actually have 29 degrees Celsius headroom before we would even consider throttling. So I'm not even gonna sit here and let this test go for a long period of time to try and warm up the coolant. The coolant's never gonna get very warm with it running at these clocks at this type of power limitation. So you know what we need to do? We need to come in here and we need to bump these limit. We are gonna turn on Precision Boost Overdrive. We are going to hit apply, full load, 75. The fan's ramped up exactly like I wanted. We are at 4.25 all core, which is actually normal. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this test run for a while. We're gonna see where the temperatures stabilize, and that will kind of conclude our first look and testing of the JayzTwoCents Edition Waterblock. I feel so weird doing this video because it's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll be honest, if it wasn't great, I would tell you that. I mean, maybe more brands should do that. All right, so here you go. We've been running for a while now. Temperatures actually came down a couple of degrees, down into 73s at a certain part of the test, and then maxed out 75. Core clock, 4.25 to 4.3 depending. So the performance is exactly as I expected. The improvements over the XC7 are definitely there. Like I said, bigger jet plate, more fins for better cooling, increased flow through there so that you can get extremely efficient cooling through the block. I know some of you aren't gonna believe me. You're gonna be like, oh, it's just got Jay's name on it. He's gonna say whatever he needs to say to make it sound positive. That's truly not the case. I mean, like I said, this has been a year in the works. There's been changes along the way. There's been some redesign. Everything is exactly as I wanted this block to be, and this is the block I'm gonna be using in my personal build for obvious reasons. And in terms of compatibility, like I said, LGA 1700 is important. I mean, it'll technically fit LGA 775, but I honestly don't feel like if you're running a CPU old enough to use LGA 775 that you should be spending any money on any modern water cooling bits. You should be upgrading your stuff first, then worry about water cooling it. AMD, AM4, it will fit AM3 as well. And it's one thing to point out, it will not work with Threadripper and it will not work with X series platforms for Intel. So it's important to note that. That's a whole different retention system that this one does not include. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching today's video. I'm extremely proud of the fact that we were able to get our name on a water cooling product, something that a lot of you for the longest time were like, Jay, you should get your own water cooling line. And although it's not my own line of product, it's a start. With a brand that we've worked with for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the HydroX series of water cooling stuff. This whole build, everything in that system is HydroX, like I said, and we did a whole tutorial on how to build that system. I couldn't be happier with the way that this turned out. So if you want to see more product with our name on it, sound off in the comments below what you think we should make next. I kind of want to make a JayzTwoCents toolkit for like water cooling, tubing bending, and all that sort of stuff to go along with this. And I think the next logical thing would obviously be a JayzTwoCents Edition Waterblock. The only problem with that is there's so many different graphics cards out there. How do you choose which ones to do? Anyway, You can learn all about the JayzTwoCents XC8 RGB water block down in the description below. Huge thanks to Corsair for believing in us and putting our name on this product as well. And as always, guys, we will see you in the next one. And I mean it. If you want one of these, and a lot of people have been asking us for a while, like when's it gonna come out, because we teased it, they are in limited supply. And that's not just to sound like everything else in the world right now. There are limited supplies of these and they will sell out, so don't wait. All right, see you in the next one.